What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today, I'll be walking through the entire draft, going over who I believe is the best pick in every single round. For ADP in this one, because that's very important, it's what we're comparing, I'm going to use an average of underdog and sleeper ADP mixed in with ESPN rankings. So, like, when you join an ESPN draft, it's not typically sorted. You can sort it by ADP, I believe. But they sort by their pre-draft rankings. So I'm using those pre-draft rankings with ADPs on Underdog and Sleeper, and I'll be comparing them with my rankings to determine which player in each round is the best value. If you enjoyed this video, well then be sure to leave a like, especially because I'm sure you can see this is going to be a very long video. It took a very, very long time for me to make. Also, if you guys do enjoy this concept, then you're going to have to let me know because I'll do a video for the worst value in every round. But you got to let me know. If you didn't like this video, I'm not going to make worst value in every round. So just got to let me know on that front. Also, the ADP data is free to view on our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. And the rankings can be viewed by anyone with the draft package or all in, of course, which I highly recommend getting if you feel like winning this season. So we will go over my findings in a second, but first, of course, I have to start things off as usual this time of the day. Yesterday's stat was only counting the games where a quarterback had over 150 passing yards. What quarterback had the game with the best completion percentage? The answer was Gardner Minshew. Jared Roberts was the first to get that right on YouTube, and at Jared Allen 72 was the first to get that right on Twitter. Today's stat. Just two running backs last season had more than one lost fumble in one game. One was Ezekiel Elliott. Who was the other one? All right, so before we go over the exact players, I do want to talk about strategy for 1 second. As you know, we've gone over this summer, my preferred draft strategy is running back early, quarterback and maybe tight end in these middle rounds, and then wide receiver to fill in early and middle, and then also specifically drafting wide receivers late. How many running backs you take really early on is going to depend on your draft spot. So if you've got a top four, top five pick, maybe even top six, you can use something we've gone over, the anchor running back strategy, only taking one early and then abandoning it for a while. If you maybe have a mid or a late first round pick, well, maybe that means you should be taking two running backs in these first 3 rounds and then you can abandon it. So it does depend, but typically I want to be acquiring these high end running backs early. And the reasoning is fairly simple. Running back is very gross later on, and I love a ton of the wide receiver sleepers. Right? Like if I take four wide receivers to start off the draft, well, then if all my sleepers are wide receivers as well, I can't take all those sleepers because I can't have a team that has like 15 wide receivers and only one running back, right? I have to even it out just a little bit. And then there's also the quarterback component, right? The high end of quarterback is extremely undervalued this season. So even though there are some great sleepers, you're missing out on a lot of value on the high end by not taking one early. And when you combine that with the fact that, well, taking a late quarterback means you lose out on another late wide receiver pick, it's even more of a reason to take quarterback early. Now, all of this is considering, or I guess not considering, the results from today's video, right? Because we haven't even gone over how things stack up, what positions are best values early, middle, and late. And if we zoom out and we look at where the positional values are in the draft, it's even more evidence for our strategy. Looking at only skill players, the biggest value can be found at running back in 7 of the first 9 rounds, including each of the first 4 rounds. But then wide receiver has the best values in 6 of the final 7, including rounds 10 through 15. In all of those rounds, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, every single one of those rounds, the best value is at wide receiver. The optimal strategy this season is kind of staring us in the face. Grab your running back early, grab a quarterback in the middle rounds, grab wide receivers late, and then fill in the gaps from there. Maybe you do want Kittle or Waller or Hawkinson or Andrews, someone like that, maybe Pitts. Well, that's fine. I'm not saying you have to take only running backs early. only quarterbacks middle because there's only one quarterback pick you're going to make, and then only wide receivers late. Like there's still other rounds to fill in there, and that's when you fill in some wide receivers, you fill in tight end. So again, just to make sure we're 100% clear, when I say running back early, it does not mean you should be taking 4 running backs in the first 4 rounds. It just means that I'm leaning towards running backs in these early rounds, and I want to be acquiring them because the value is at other positions later on, and it's there for running back. Also, I'll be going over the best skill player in each round in today's video, so excluding quarterback. But that's honestly just because it would turn into a quarterback rankings video, which I didn't want to do. The best value in rounds 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are all quarterbacks. Again, the high end of quarterback offers insane value and upside, and people are just not taking that into account on average this season. Sure, your league might take quarterback early, but as a whole, drafters are letting quarterbacks fall a little bit too much this season. So you should be taking advantage. I don't want to just keep mentioning quarterback. So I'll say who the best quarterback is when we get to the round. But yeah, I'm going to go over the skill players. I thought that would be more fun. So that was a lot of strategy. This is going to be a long video. Let's buckle up. First round. And again, there are timestamps. So if you're like, I don't know why, but if you're like, I don't care about the third round, right? Well, I'll skip over the third round. If you're on desktop, you can see at the bottom exactly when we'll talk about each round. You can skip around however you want. But first round, best value is Aaron Jones. His average ADP is 10.7 across these sites, but I have him 6th overall. I do think that A.J. Dillon is going to have a large role this season, and I do think that the Packers will see some level of touchdown regression, but I really don't think that matters all that much. This is still an incredible offense. Jones has carry, reception, and touchdown upside, and we've seen him dominate in the past. So this isn't us projecting something that we've never seen before, right? Aaron Jones is a phenomenal pick in the first round, and the only way he's going to bust is through an injury. So I highly recommend if you're in that mid first round, if he falls through in the late first round, absolutely be attacking Aaron Jones. In the second round, the best value is Najee Harris. His average ADP is 16.4, but my projections have him 12th overall. Now, that's only about 4.5 spots of value for each of these first 2 players, but that's all you should realistically expect, right? Like if someone was this incredible steal, they were going 15 spots back from where they should, the market's going to adjust for that, right? We're not expecting to see huge values in the first few rounds. But as for Harris, it's really just the volume. I think his ADP can only get so high because one, he's a rookie, and there are people who just do not feel comfortable taking him early because of that. And two, because of the narrative that the Steelers' offensive line is really bad, and people are worried that he's going to bust because of that. I just go back to, what I always say when people bring up offensive line. It is a factor, but it is not a major one. The most important thing we care about is volume and finding players that can contribute in all 3 areas: carries, receptions, and touchdowns. I talked about that with Aaron Jones. If someone is hitting on every single one of those on a good offense, I don't care if their offensive line is like bottom 30%. I simply don't. Okay? Maybe Harris is going to be, and maybe not even maybe, he's going to be less efficient. He is not going to be Nick Chubb. He is not going to be Gus Edwards, right? Those guys are going to be highly efficient so they can make up for both of them not having the receptions. But because Harris has those receptions, he can make up for it by having half a yard per carry less. That's not what's going to make the difference in games. What's going to make the difference is he catching receptions? Is he using the goal line? Both of those are a yes, and so you should draft Harris in the second round for sure. Next up, I actually want to go over the third and the fourth rounds grouped together. So Mahomes is the best value in the third round, and Josh Allen is the best value in the fourth round. But among skill players, the best value in the third is Dave Montgomery. His ADP is 34.4 with a ranking for me of 23. And then the best value in the fourth round is Chris Carson, ADP of about 40. and ranking for me of 27. Now, I tend to lean more towards wide receiver in this spot, especially if I started off with two running backs, right? Like, so if I took running back first two rounds, I'm much less likely to take that third running back because of the positional value, right? I already have two, right? So my next one, assuming I can't have like, there's no three running back spots, assuming it's two running backs and a flex or two flexes, like that third running back I have to use in the flex. And so I have less like flexibility with that. They have to be used there. It's just not as valuable to my team. Now, wide receiver is more valuable. And since I love a lot of the wide receivers in that range, that's just a very natural start, starting off with running backs and then going wide receiver in this range. But Montgomery and Carson are two running backs I will deviate on that for. They can't really go in the second round since there are just so many elite players. And then they get kind of lost in the shuffle because a lot of people start taking wide receiver and tight end in this range. But these two are very, very good picks. They have locked in volume, high touchdown upside, have produced running back one seasons in the past, at least from points per game, and they don't have really any competition on their roster right now. There's just very little not to like about these two, and they do go with a number of different builds. They are good enough to be your running back one if maybe you had a later first round pick, right? And maybe Adams fell to you, or Tyreek Hill fell to you, or Kelsey fell to you. And you compare, two of those players. Maybe you throw in a Calvin Ridley, but in some way, maybe you start off wide receiver, tight end wide receiver, something like that. Well, these guys are available, late third, early fourth round. That could be a really, really nice start, especially because you could take both of them. What if you did get to start off Tyreek Hill, Diggs, and then you went with David Montgomery and Chris Carson? So they fit a kind of unique build. They are not players I expect to be top five running backs, but if you told me at the end of the year that one of them was because they hit on touchdowns and hit on receptions, I would believe you. So I think both of them are really, really good picks. Just know that if I started off with two running backs, I'm unlikely to take, definitely not both of them, but I'm unlikely to take one of them just because there's less value there. So it kind of depends on how you started off your draft. In the fifth round, the best value is Kyler Murray, but the best skill player value is Mark Andrews, which I was not fully expecting to see. I think this is a result of my moving him up recently. The Ravens wide receiver core is just getting crushed by injuries. Now we have Dobbins missing the entire season. So while they'll never ever be, or I guess in the very near future, they're not going to be a pass heavy offense, they still are going to throw sometimes, and they're still going to be relatively efficient through the air because of how good they are on the ground. And so, given that to start the season, it's possible Mark Andrews is just like the only guy left standing. I don't love taking tight end here since I do really prefer getting a quarterback in the fifth round, or maybe, a wide receiver that should have gone in like the fourth round that falls into the fifth. Like, that's what I prefer doing. But you know what? If that's not a value, the quarterbacks are taken, there's no wide receiver values, and I don't want running back, Mark Andrews is not a bad pick because there's just not that many players to throw to right now. Now, we say right now. Another reason I don't typically go after him as much, and I tend to lean towards wide receiver and quarterback, is, well, Bateman can get healthy. And Marquise Brown is getting healthy right now. And Sammy Watkins could sustain his health, and so by the end of the season, maybe Mark Andrews doesn't have as big a role as he will to start the year. But still, it doesn't take that much to be tight end one, right? It doesn't take that much. And so that's kind of why he's showing up as the best value, even if we don't think he's going to have a dominant season. I also want to note that Pitts was right behind him. So Pitts and Andrews actually do show up both as the best values if you can get him in the fifth round. I know that's going to be a question a lot of you have as you're doing your drafts right now. Yes, I'm fine with Pitts there. I do actually have Pitts ranked ahead of Andrews. It's just that Andrews does go like a decent amount further back in that fifth round. Sixth round, best value if you can get him is Dak Prescott. But the best skill player value is Devonta Smith. His ADP is 72. My projections have him 65th. That's not really like a huge steal, but half a round is still pretty nice value. The other big name in the sixth round was Chase Claypool at around like 5 to 6 spots of value. Other than that, though, most of the players are being valued correctly in this range. this is kind of like the end of that like mid-range wide receiver options that we really like. So people are just grabbing what's left over, and so no one's becoming like some incredible value. Both Smith and Claypool, though, do make really, really good mid-round picks. Smith is the clear number one wide receiver on what's not going to be like a great offense by any means, but the Eagles are at least decent, when he has competent quarterback play. Then Claypool, I mean, he comes with so much upside. 99th percentile speed score, clear number two in a pass first offense, clear red zone threat. I mean, it just makes like too much sense to be grabbing these guys. Claypool has a very, very, very low chance of busting, a very, very high ceiling. And then I guess technically you could argue Smith has a better chance of busting because we simply haven't seen him in the NFL yet. But we all know he's a great wide receiver. We know he's going to be the number one. And so I would argue both these guys, very, very safe picks. They're not going to bust at their ADP. And I do believe they both have pretty nice upside. In the seventh round, the best value is Aaron Rodgers. But the best value from a skill player perspective is actually Damian Harris. And that might be very surprising to some of you, as I've been off Harris for most of the summer. But here is my updated take on that situation. Stevenson is still the running back that I want to own since he is a lot cheaper in drafts. But with that being said, the departure of Sony does solidify Harris's role. He still has capped upside since they not only have Stevenson, but they also have James White. And so he's just simply not going to have many receptions. But he could also score 12 touchdowns. I've seen some people take him as a bet to lead the league in rushing touchdowns. Obviously, it's like a plus 5,000-6,000 bet, but point is, he can score a lot of touchdowns. And if that's the case, you don't care as much about the receptions, especially in the seventh round, right? Also, everyone's been assuming the Patriots can be bad again, but I started making this video. Basically, what I was going to say here is Mac Jones is obviously going to start the season at some point as the quarterback. Like, I wasn't guaranteed or going to guarantee that he was going to be the quarterback in week one, but we knew at some point within the first like 3 weeks he was going to take over, and that was going to elevate the offense, and it was going to be a really big boost for the skill players. Well, now Newton's cut, right? Like literally as I'm hitting record, I see Newton gets cut, and so that just means they're locked into Mac Jones. And when you think about that difference, it's like, well, one, literally anyone would have been an upgrade over Newton from the fantasy perspective of the skill players because he ran the ball so much. He took so many goal line carries. Like it was just, he crushed the value of not only the receivers because he wasn't throwing that much, but the running backs. He was taking all their touchdowns, all the rushing yards. Take that away and you put a quarterback that has some upside. Now we're going to go over Mac Jones a little bit later in the video, but I think everyone is finally going to start to realize that the Patriots are actually going to have like a relatively decent offense. They're actually going to have a quarterback that's not going to run in a million touchdowns, and they have a really good offensive line, and they're still going to be a ground-based offense. And their number one is going pretty late. So I'm back on the Damian Harris bandwagon. I actually, I like started this train when he was drafted. I don't know why they didn't use him that much in his rookie season. He had like 3 carries, was something crazy like that. So they barely used him. He missed a lot of time last season due to injuries. They had Sony Michel. And again, I was off him to start the summer simply because they had too many guys. Harris, Sony, Stevenson were all capable in early downs, and we know James White is going to be a third down back. But now that Sony is gone, now that we're confirmed starting the season with Mac Jones as the quarterback, it opens up a lot more paths, and his ADP has only gone up like half a round. And I think it should go up more. So in the 7th round, I think it's a really nice value to take Harris. Obviously, best in standard, a little bit worse in half, not as great in full PPR. The best value in the 8th round is Tom Brady, but the best value overall for other positions is Trace Sermon. Now, Raheem Mostert will very likely open the season as the starting running back for the 49ers, but that doesn't really matter, right? Sermon is still going to see plenty of work from the start, and he has league-winning upside if Mostert were to ever get injured. This is going to be an incredibly efficient offense, and they're going to be incredibly run-heavy as well. So I honestly think that both Mostert and Sermon are buys. I wouldn't draft them both in the same team, right? But, if you believe in one of them, you think Sermon's better, you think that Mostert's better, whichever you believe, I think they're both good picks because of their upside. I personally do prefer Sermon simply because he's younger and he's just a better prospect. But I don't think there should be some huge gap in their ADPs. So if someone else believes Sermon's really good in your league, they take him early and then Mostert starts to slip, they'll go after Mostert, right? But personally, if they were going back to back, I prefer Sermon. I think that this could be a hot hand situation, which always gets people concerned. But one, remember this is the eighth round, so you should not be expecting to find featured running backs in the eighth round, right? They're all gone. Second, it's totally fine targeting a committee on these higher end rushing offenses. Everyone was taking Dobbins in like the third round in a committee simply because the Ravens are such a good rushing offense and he was going to be very efficient. And like that was a fine pick, right? Obviously not anymore because he missed the season, but that was a fine pick. But we're going really late now on an offense that could rival Baltimore for like the best rushing attack. And so it's fine that they're going to use a committee. Now I'm not starting to take Sermon in like the fifth round or anything. But again, we're in the eighth round. And at this point, I think he's a really, really good pick. The ninth round is the final one where we will mention quarterback as a top value. So yay for that. Jalen Hurts is the number one value in the ninth round. But for skill players, the top value is AJ Dillon. Remember what we just went over. This is not a range where you're expecting to find a featured running back, and honestly, not even a starting running back in this range. But Dillon is very clearly the backup to Aaron Jones. And there are a lot of reasons that you should want to draft him this season. I mean, this offense is really, really good. So the touchdown's going to be there. Jamal Williams is behind 150 touches, which Dillon will get most of. But the biggest reason is the upside, right? He's going to have a role. He's going to be productive when Aaron Jones is healthy. Oh my goodness. I mean, even if you only told me Aaron Jones is missing like 4 games this season, well, he's what, a high end two or maybe even a low end one, depending on the matchup. Talking about AJ Dillon there in those weeks. Like, that's really, really nice. And Aaron Jones is still a player that for a while to start his career, everyone was like, oh, you can't draft him because he's hurt all the time. Well, now he has a few like relatively healthy seasons and now he can't get hurt. I mean, again, it's not like he needs to tear his ACL. Like he literally just needs to have like a mild ankle sprain, miss a few weeks, and AJ Dillon's paying off, right? Because you're getting elite production in those weeks. And then if something severe were to happen to Aaron Jones, you've got a league winner, right? But I think Dillon returns value even while Jones is healthy, and then you have that upside if something went wrong. 10th round, we start the reign of terror for wide receivers, where the number one value is now Michael Pittman Jr. T.Y. Hilton has never been a legitimate concern for me, but now he's of zero concern since he's going to miss a good chunk of time with a neck injury. We were very excited about Pittman last season, but we understood that not only was he a rookie, but he was playing with the corpse of Philip Rivers, right? Wentz is going to be back soon. He's recovered from the foot. Now he's on the COVID list, but regardless, he's going to be back relatively soon, and he's going to be better than Philip Rivers. The Colts have had Pittman kind of in bubble wrap this summer. Like he did, I believe, play a little bit in the preseason, but they did not give him many snaps in the preseason. If he'd gone out there and played like 70% of the snaps in the preseason, they'd been giving him a ton of looks. Like, make no mistake, he's going multiple rounds earlier than this. Like, I could see if he had a good preseason being in like the seventh round, right? But just because he wasn't making splash plays in the preseason, they weren't throwing him out there a ton. We didn't see him with Wentz because Wentz has been injured. Like, just because people haven't seen it, his ADP has stayed down. He's a great pick, and I'm very happy he didn't have some like monster preseason because now we can get him this late. In the 11th round, the best value is Elijah Moore. And part of the Pittman take kind of carries over here. I mean, Moore was legitimately the most hyped player in all of fantasy this summer. And then he misses a little time with a quad injury, doesn't get to destroy in the preseason, which he would have done. He'd have gone off in the preseason. And what do we see? Well, now Corey Davis is getting hype. He's climbing in drafts. We see Moore get a depressed ADP. He's just a great value right now. Like, obviously, ADPs are very driven by hype. They're driven by who's scoring touchdowns in the preseason, who's getting really good reports in camp. Well, if Moore hadn't gotten hurt, he would have been going rounds earlier than this. I promise you. He'd have been an eighth round pick if he had played in the preseason. But now we can get him on a discount. He's good to go from the injury. He's going to be totally fine. It was not a major injury. Like, I'm not gonna say that I'm not gonna say that I'm not saying this because I have a bold takes video coming in, I don't know, a few days or a week or something like that. So I reserve the right to include Elijah Moore in that video. I don't want to say right now that he's going to outscore Jamar Chase and Devonta Smith and be the number one rookie wide receiver in fantasy because they are more talented. I believe slightly more talented. I think it's really close, but I think they're more talented and they're in better situations. But I think Moore has a very good chance of posting very, very similar numbers to those two. He is still incredibly talented in his own right. And we could honestly look back, in like 3, 4 years and be like, oh, yeah, he should have been going in that same range of the draft. And while I think that like Corey Davis is good, I don't think he's a number one. And I would rather just wait, take more a few rounds later, because I think he's going to have an epic rookie season. In the 12th round, the best value is our boy, of course, Jacoby Myers. Imagine thinking that you would get through a best picks video without me talking about Jacoby Myers, right? Even with his rise in ADP, and it's gonna continue. His ADP is gonna keep going up because it was just laughably low to start the summer. He remains one of the best picks you can make this season. You've got just like a clear lead receiver on an ascending offense with unknown upside at quarterback. Again, when I was making this video, I was going to sit here and explain how while we know what Cam can do, we know Cam's not going to be the quarterback. It's going to be Mac at some point. We know that Newton was a bad passer last season, that he vultured touchdowns, but people are kind of just assuming the Patriots are still going to be this like gross run first offense that's moving the ball slowly, not really producing much through the air. But they scored on 73% of Mac Jones' drives in the preseason, and he put together the highest graded preseason for a rookie quarterback since PFF started tracking in 2013. He just edged out Patrick Mahomes' preseason in 2017. Now, I'm not saying that Mac Jones is going to go out here and like win the MVP this season. He's going to be incredible, right? But he's clearly shown that he's good and he's going to sustain this offense. He's going to be a huge boost to every single player on this offense from a fantasy perspective. And given the volume that we are expecting Jacoby Myers to command this season, given that he literally did not score a touchdown last year, he has 2 career passing touchdowns, 0 receiving touchdowns. If the touchdowns start coming in, which we saw a glimpse of it in the preseason, and he's maintaining a very large target share, which we expect because Aguilar's had a terrible camp. He's not going to be there, or he's going to be on the team, obviously, but he had a bad camp. He basically only runs deep routes. Like they make the more intricate routes for Jacoby Myers. Gunnar Olszewski just did not have a very good preseason. He's not a huge concern. Kendrick Bourne didn't have a great preseason. He's not a big concern. N'Keal Harry is trash. He's not a concern. It's Myers. Myers is the guy. You should not be going in the double-digit rounds in fantasy. And so the fact that he's the best value in the 12th round is laughable. You need to be drafting Myers this season. Moving on to the 13th round, where the best value is Terrace Marshall. Marshall is another wide receiver we talked about a lot recently, so we don't need to go like super in-depth here. But, he is just a great mixture of talent and opportunities. Obviously, a very talented wide receiver. He slipped in the draft when he shouldn't have, but the opportunity's there. He's clearly got that third wide receiver spot on lock. Clearly going to be used a lot, both outside and from the slot. And another thing is the touchdowns, right? Robbie Anderson had 3 touchdowns last season. He's never had more than 7. DJ Moore had 4 touchdowns last year, which is actually tied for his best performance over his 3 years. Like, these are not 2 like red zone monsters, right? These are not players who even want to throw the ball that much in the red zone. But Terrace Marshall is. And JJ Zachariason, he had a bold prediction that Terrace Marshall was going to lead the Panthers in receiving touchdowns, and I am fully on board with that take. Like, I think it is well within his range of outcomes to be the most targeted player in the red zone for this team. And if that comes true, yeah, he's going to shatter his AAP in the 13th round. In the 14th round, best value is Emmanuel Sanders. It is fairly clear at this point that Sanders is the number 2 wide receiver on the Buffalo Bills. Gabriel Davis and Cole Beasley, like, they're going to have their weeks, they're going to have their blowups, but Sanders is the second wide receiver to own in Buffalo. They have been moving him all around the formation in the preseason, and we've just heard all offseason, all summer. Like they were so excited to get him on the team. It's just clear at this point he's the number two, right? I probably wouldn't start him in week one just because like I do want to see how large that target share is, how much do they spread the looks around, but he's going to get more targets than people think. And Buffalo drops back to pass so often, even when they have a lead, that there's going to be targets to go around. And while Diggs is, he's obviously going to get a lot of work, like there are so many targets. So, like, I'm buying Sanders in the 14th round. That's ridiculous. Like, you're not expecting players in this range to just go nuclear, but Emmanuel Sanders has plenty of upside this season. So, I think he's a great pick in this range. Best value in the 15th round is actually Sterling Shepard. But honestly, that's just because there were no good picks when I did the ADPs of the 15th round. The other options that we were choosing between here are Bateman, Tyrell Williams, Campbell, Kmet, and Tevin Coleman. Like Shepard is a fine late round pick, but he's fairly uninspiring to be honest. Like I do think he's going to outperform his ADP, especially while Galladay is out, if Evan Ingram misses some time. But there's no world where Shepard is like a weekly starter on a championship team unless you're in like a 20-team league. And so even though he's technically the best value in the 15th round, he's not someone that I would personally take. I would just find your favorite value in the 16th or the 17th round. Like just try and get different rounds. Maybe you get someone who should have been going in the 12th or 13th round in the 14th, or in the 15th. So I personally would not draft him, but he is technically the best value in the 15th round. Last but not least, we'll go over the best value in the 16th round, and that is Ramondre Stevenson. Honestly, though, you're not going to be able to take him in the 16th round. I promise you, this weekend, his ADP is going to increase. Anyone paying attention has heard his name by now, and it doesn't take that much to reach on a player whose ADP is the 16th round, right? Like people are going to start taking him in like the 12th, the 13th round, because let's be honest, like if you only have 16 rounds, well, you're taking your defense, you're taking your kicker, and so like why wouldn't you start taking him in like the 13th round, the 14th round? So his ADP is going to rise, but the bull case again is just the same as it is for Harris. This offense is going to be better than people are thinking, and the run game is going to be a large part of that. And if something were to happen to Damian Harris, Stevenson is now a guy who's going to get all of the goal line carries. He's a much better receiver than Harris is. He's got really, really nice feet. He can make people miss. He's got enough speed to break long runs. Like, he's a fantastic running back. Again, Damian Harris is the starter. He's the guy who you're going to watch that first week and be like, why did I draft Stevenson? That's probably what's going to happen, right? Harris is going to get a ton of work, a ton of goal line opportunities. You're drafting Stevenson for the upside. If something happens to Harris, you've got a guy who's a very large part of your championship run at that point, and a guy that I think throughout the season can start to carve out a larger and a larger role, not to where he's going to be like a great pick while everyone is healthy, but again, for that upside if there's an injury. So that is the best value in every single round using ADPs from Underdog, Sleeper, and ESPN. You could realistically make this list for yourself, just using the ADP on whatever site that you want to use. Maybe you're on Yahoo. Well, our ADP page that is free has Yahoo ADPs. Actually, it's Yahoo is the pre-draft rankings on that one. But the point is, you can just download that. You can just download my rankings, just copy the page over and to Excel, into Google Sheets, and you can make this list yourself. But honestly, I've done that for you. I've listed players as targets on the rankings, and if you follow the rankings, you're going to come out with a very, very good team. You guys have been sending me your teams that you've drafted using the rankings, and honestly, like I have not seen a bad team yet. Like they have been phenomenal teams. You guys are absolutely crushing it. Please continue crushing it. I'm fully expecting us to have a great season this year. And if you want to use those rankings that everyone else is using to crush it in their draft, you can check them out at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting that like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.